I actually think the people making fun of the Texas flood victims are doing so because they're good people who are having trouble navigating this. Let me preface this by saying that if you saw my first video on this, you know that my heart absolutely goes out to the victims and their families, and I have not made fun of them. I think it's precisely empathy for the victims of this tragedy that is making people go, see, because this is exactly the sort of thing they didn't want to happen to anyone. I do make a lot of comedic content. It's a coping mechanism. We know this. We laugh so we don't cry is one of the most commonly commented things on my posts. It's the method my father used under his fascist dictator. It's the method I'm going to use under ours. It is an incredibly common coping mechanism, especially when we feel anger, to the point where we can't even control it sometimes. Our brains use laughter to reduce stress hormones and release more oxygen into the brain to basically calm our nervous system down. It can often be a reaction to trauma. And I think it can sometimes be confusing, and people can struggle to find that line, because we are angry for the victims of the flood, for any victims of the administration, at the people who may have contributed. And yeah, sometimes it turns out that those people are one and the same, right? The victims and the contributors. But number one, the obvious one, the kids, they're not the people you need to be angry at. And their parents may not be either. And if their parents are, yeah, we're going to be angry at them, right? Because what do you mean you couldn't keep your own child safe? What do you mean that you hated someone else so much you endangered your own child so you could endanger theirs? And I think that's why this tragedy is getting such an elevated response of that type. Maybe I'm being too charitable here, but I think people are empathizing with the victims, just like they have been with all of them. And because they're kids, they're especially angry, and they're just not handling those feelings appropriately, or they're just not identifying the line quite as accurately. I do think it's important to point out why these things happen when they happen, but I also think it's gonna get harder and harder to find that line. And I've preemptively warned about this for myself. The angrier we get at the people who caused this because we didn't want this sort of thing to happen to them either, the more we're also going to be thinking about how they wanted all this to happen to us. And that is a really, really difficult idea to cope with, especially if you're empathetic and care about others, which you are, as evidenced by the fact that you are so angry about this. My only advice for these situations, which are gonna keep coming up, is if you're angry, be angry. But maybe stay away from the humor in these sorts of situations. But also, let's try to give each other some grace as we laugh our way through trauma.